I'll forget you in a week. Already found someone better, my fiancée sneered, humiliating me in front of her family. I just took the ring back. Did this. She went nuclear. All right, Reddit. My fiancée cheated, publicly humiliated me, then said she'd forget me in a week. Grab some popcorn. It gets messy. Luke here, 32 male from Pittsburgh. 3 years of my life just went up in flames over a Sunday dinner, but honestly, best thing that ever happened to me. You'll see why. First, let me paint the picture. I rebuild heavy equipment for a living. Caterpillar excavators, John Deere monsters, anything with hydraulics and enough horsepower to level a city block. There's something satisfying about taking a machine that's completely broken and making it purr like new. The shop's between two bridges on the Mon River. During lunch, I watch coal barges push down river, while eating the same sandwich I've packed for 2 years. Turkey, Swiss, apple, black coffee, and an actual thermos. My supervisor Jake says I'm the only guy under 40 who still brings a thermos to work. Guilty as charged. Tuesday and Thursday nights I train at Kozlov's Boxing Club on the south side. Old school gym that reeks of leather and decades of sweat. Coach Kozlov doesn't waste words. He corrects your form with a tap of his walking stick or a grunt in Russian. But here's the thing that really matters to this story. My project car. 1973 Dodge Challenger that I pulled from a field in Washington County. Complete rust bucket when I bought it, but the numbers matching 340 small block was still breathing underneath all that surface cancer. The frame was solid, and I'd been slowly bringing this beast back from the dead for 2.5 years. Right now, I'm debating between the original Torque Flight automatic or swapping in a Tremec 5-speed. The purist would have opinions, but it's my darn car, you know? My buddy Ray thinks I'm insane for taking on a frame-off restoration while planning a wedding. Ray's been my best friend since we served together in the Guard. He does security systems now, thinks everything needs cameras and access controls. He's also the guy who saved my ass in this story, so pay attention to Ray. Dude's the real MVP. After his messy divorce 2 years back, Ray convinced me to start documenting things better. Memories fade, but receipts don't lie, he always says. Smart man. So about those wedding expenses, Fiona and I agreed last February to split everything 50-50. I have the text thread to prove it. February 12th, her exact words. Makes sense, we're both adults with jobs. I started tracking every expense. The venue deposit was $2,800. I paid it, sent her the receipt, asked for her half. She sent me $1,400 3 weeks later with some nonsense story about a delayed commission check. Made sense at the time. She sold real estate, so income could be unpredictable, right? Wrong. The caterer wanted $2,200 up front. Same routine. I paid. She sent $800 and promised the rest next week. Meanwhile, and this is the part that should have been a giant red flag, she was posting Instagram stories from expensive restaurants, weekend trips with her girlfriends, designer purse hauls, spa days, concert tickets, but somehow never had money for wedding expenses we'd both agreed to split. I didn't push it, though. Not my style to create drama over money with someone I was planning to marry, but I kept records. Here's the thing about diesel repair work. Problems don't lie. You diagnose the issue, order the right parts, fix it properly, move on to the next machine. People are way more complicated. Fiona had been treating our wedding like it was her personal coronation. 3 Pinterest boards, vendor spreadsheets, a planning binder thick as a phone book. She talked about centerpieces and invitation fonts like they were matters of national security. Meanwhile, I handled all the actual payments while watching our savings account drain as she focused on the creative aspects. She kept dropping hints about upgrading the venue to somewhere more prestigious and bumping up the guest count because people will judge us if we cheap out. When I reminded her we'd already stretched our budget to the limit, she suggested I could work some overtime, or maybe sell the Challenger to free up money for what really matters. Then here's where things imploded. One Tuesday, she announced, that her family wanted us over for Sunday dinner. Her mother apparently needed to coordinate final details. I told her I'd be there Sunday at 3 after I finished installing new bushings in the Challenger's front suspension. She rolled her eyes and made some comment about how I always prioritize my little hobby over family obligations. When I pointed out that precision suspension work can't be rushed without messing something up, she said maybe I should have thought about that before wasting money on a rust bucket. Right. Because planning ahead is apparently a character flaw. In heavy equipment diagnostics, you learn to read the subtle indicators before catastrophic failure. Ignore the warning signs and you're looking at complete engine rebuilds. Or worse, I should have applied that same thinking to my relationship. Yeah, I was about to learn this lesson the hard way. Sunday afternoon rolled around, and I showed up at Fiona's parents' place at exactly 3 p.m. I'd spent the morning pressing new control arm bushings into the Challenger, so my hands were scrubbed with pumice soap and my fingernails cleaned with a wire brush. Fiona's sister Janet was there with her husband, plus Fiona's dad working the grill outside while her mom ran the kitchen. The first hour was normal nonsense: weather, work, holiday travel plans. Fiona kept checking her phone and smiling at messages, or how she immediately changed the subject whenever anyone asked about the Challenger or my job. Classic red flags in hindsight, but you know how it is. The shift happened when Janet asked about honeymoon plans. Fiona launched into her standard breakdown of upgraded resort packages and first-class flights, none of which we'd actually agreed on, by the way. Then she pivoted to how some people weren't stepping up financially to make their shared dreams a reality. She was staring directly at me when she said it. Then came the systematic demolition of everything I cared about. My little hobby car was apparently a waste of money that could have been spent on our future. Maybe if I had real ambitions instead of being satisfied with mediocrity, we could afford the wedding she actually deserved. Janet laughed uncomfortably, but I caught the knowing nod she exchanged with Fiona's mother. This was a coordinated ambush, and I was the guest of honor. Fiona kept building steam. My job was fine for someone without goals. The house I rent was embarrassing to bring people to. My routine was suffocating, and my friends were guys going nowhere. She'd apparently been settling this whole time, hoping I'd eventually grow up and want more from life. Then came the Kevin guy revelation. Not just a friend, Fiona described him as someone who actually has ambition and knows what he wants from life. Someone with a real career who took her to places that matter and treated her like she deserved to be treated. They'd been connecting for months, and he'd shown her what real chemistry felt like. She said all this while her family nodded like they'd heard it before. These people had been in on it. Fiona's dad had stopped whatever he was grilling. Janet stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, pretending to scroll through her phone. The room had that weird energy you get right before something explosive happens. Then Fiona looked directly at me and twisted the engagement ring off her finger. You know what? I'm completely done with this charade. She threw it at me. Didn't hand it back. Threw it like she was trying to hurt me with it. The ring bounced off my chest and clattered across the hardwood floor, making this sharp metallic sound. Real classy exit strategy. It's cheap anyway. Just like everything else about this relationship. She turned to her family. Did you know he bought this at some discount jewelry store? Kevin would never be so cheap with something that important. The whole room went silent, except for Fiona's continued monologue. 3 years of my life wasted on someone who thinks fixing trucks is a career and spending weekends in a garage is a lifestyle. I deserve so much better than this. She looked at me with pure contempt. I'll forget you in a week. Honestly, I'm already halfway there. Here's the thing, Reddit. At that moment, I felt this weird calm wash over me. Not anger, not hurt, just this crystal clear understanding that I was watching someone reveal exactly who they really were. I stood up, walked over to where the ring had landed, and picked it up. White gold band with a 1/4-carat diamond that I'd spent 4 months saving for. Bought from a legitimate jeweler, not some discount store. Not expensive by some standards, but it represented 4 months of careful budgeting and overtime shifts. I slipped it into my pocket, walked over to where Fiona's dad was standing by the sliding door, and pulled her spare house key off my keychain. Thanks for dinner, Mr. Parker. That was it. Didn't defend myself, didn't correct her lies about the ring, didn't point out that she'd been spending my money while cheating on me. What would be the point? You don't argue with someone who's already decided to humiliate you in front of their family. I walked through the dining room where everyone else was sitting, all of them suddenly fascinated by their plates. Made it to the front door and pulled out my phone. One-word text to Ray. Implemented. By the time I reached the end of the driveway, Ray's Silverado was pulling up to the curb. Perfect timing, because we'd planned for this possibility. Ray didn't ask questions. Didn't go inside to verify what had happened, just rolled down his window and nodded toward the passenger seat. Well, he said, once we were on the main road, that was either the shortest Sunday dinner in recorded history or the most efficient breakup I've ever witnessed. My phone was already buzzing with what I assumed were texts from Fiona, but I didn't look. No point reading the aftermath while emotions were still running hot. The drive to my place took 12 minutes. Enough time to start making mental lists. Change the locks. Sort out the banking situation. Update emergency contacts at work. Cancel whatever wedding vendors I could without massive penalties. Practical concerns first. Emotional processing could wait. But here's what really ticks me off about the whole thing. She orchestrated this entire humiliation show while owing me money. She'd been using our joint account to fund her affair, then had the audacity to call me cheap in front of her family. The level of manipulation was actually impressive, if you're into that sort of thing. Monday morning, 6 a.m. sharp. First order of business, new locks. Not just changing the codes. I replaced the entire deadbolt assembly with a Schlage grade one that Ray recommended from his security work. 45 minutes and $68 at Home Depot. The old hardware went into my toolbox as backup. Fiona had texted me 18 times Sunday night and called 11 times before 7 a.m. Monday. I read every single message, took screenshots, then blocked her number. The messages started with fake apologies. I didn't mean it like that, and escalated to full rage mode. You can't just ignore me, with several threats about coming to get my stuff mixed in. Amazing how quickly "I'll forget you in a week" turned into obsessive messaging, right? Work was normal. Spent Monday rebuilding the injector pump on a 2019 Caterpillar 329 and used my lunch break to update my personnel file with HR. Removed Fiona from emergency contacts, insurance beneficiary, retirement account. Added Ray as primary contact and my brother as backup. Monday night, I started what I call the audit. Joint checking, $3,847.32. Joint savings, $12,203.18. Shared subscriptions, Netflix, Spotify, gym membership. I downloaded 12 months of statements, took screenshots of everything, documented what I could change immediately versus what needed both signatures. The wedding vendor situation was more complex. I organized everything in manila folders. Contracts, payment schedules, cancellation policies, refund calculations. Turns out most vendors had pretty reasonable cancellation windows if you knew how to read the fine print. The caterer had a 2-week policy with 60% refund. Venue required 30 days notice, but would return deposits minus a $350 processing fee. DJ had a 10-day policy with full refund if you canceled more than 2 weeks out. Then I found that February text thread where Fiona agreed to split costs. Her exact words, "Makes sense, we're both adults with jobs." Screenshot saved with timestamp clearly visible. I set up an incident log in a spiral notebook. Date, time, description of any contact attempts. Kept entries factual and brief. October 23rd, 6:22 p.m. Phone call from blocked number, did not answer. Tuesday at boxing, Coach Kozlov had me working combinations on the heavy bag. My timing was off and he tapped my lead shoulder with his walking stick. "You pull punch back too fast. Follow through, then return to guard." Wednesday, Ray showed up after work with plastic storage bins and his label printer. We went through my house room by room, identifying everything that belonged to Fiona. Some clothes in the bedroom closet, toiletries, maybe 15 books, a coffee mug she claimed was lucky, and this ugly throw pillow she'd bought for the couch. 3 years of living together, and her entire footprint fit in 2 boxes. Makes you wonder what she was actually invested in, you know? Each item got photographed and logged on a simple list. When she came for her stuff, there wouldn't be any confusion about what was hers versus what we'd bought together. Ray also helped me set up a shared Google spreadsheet tracking all wedding expenses and vendor contacts. Clean formatting with cancellation deadlines highlighted in red, refund percentages calculated automatically. The man knows his way around a spreadsheet. The Challenger became my evening therapy. Started completely tearing down the interior. Bench seat out, door panels, dash components, carpet, headliner. Everything labeled with masking tape and stored in the spare bedroom. The wiring harness needed complete replacement anyway, and I'd been putting off the brake line inspection. I ordered some parts online. Edelbrock intake manifold for the 340 rebuild, MSD ignition system, new seat covers for when I got around to reupholstering. Just steady progress on something that was completely mine. By Friday, I had total control of the situation. Fiona's access removed from everything I could handle unilaterally. Shared documents organized with critical deadlines flagged. Her belongings inventoried and ready for pickup. New locks installed. Incident log started. Financial accounts secured. The wedding was supposed to happen in 6 weeks. Most vendors had cancellation policies that worked in my favor if I moved fast and followed procedures exactly. 3 years of relationship were ending, but the financial damage was still manageable. Assuming I stayed organized and didn't make emotional decisions, which I didn't. Tuesday morning, 6:30 a.m. Time to start making vendor calls before work. The venue coordinator picked up on the second ring. I referenced the 30-day cancellation clause in Section 4.2 of our contract, provided our booking reference, and requested written confirmation. She put me on hold for 3 minutes, came back with a cancellation number, confirmed the deposit refund minus processing fees would take 7 to 10 business days. Next up, caterer. 2-week window, 60% refund policy clearly stated in the contract. I'd paid the $2,200 deposit 7 weeks earlier, so I qualified for $1,320 back. The owner requested cancellation in writing, so I fired off an email immediately with contract references and phone confirmation details. The DJ offered a full refund if canceled more than 7 days before the event. Simple call. Every conversation got documented. Date, time, contact person, confirmation numbers, expected refund amounts. By the time I left for work, I'd canceled 6 vendors and had 2 more to call during lunch. All refunds going back to my account since I'd been making the payments. Turns out being the cheap guy who actually pays the bills has its advantages. The ring situation got handled Thursday. Took it to Morrison's Fine Jewelry in Shadyside. The appraiser looked it over for maybe 8 minutes, checked the diamond grade against reference charts, quoted me a price that was about 65% of retail. Fair deal for a quick sale with no complications. Walked out with a check for $1,680. Enough to order the suspension rebuild kit I'd been pricing for the Challenger, plus proper wiring tools and interior hardware. Sometimes the trash takes itself out and pays for the privilege. Small claims paperwork took longer than the vendor cancellations. Pennsylvania's system has straightforward forms online, but I wanted everything filed correctly the first time. The complaint was simple. Fiona owed me her agreed share of non-refundable wedding expenses. I printed that February text thread where she'd written, "Makes sense, we're both adults with jobs," and highlighted that specific line in yellow. Added copies of all receipts. The venue processing fee was $350. Photographer's non-refundable portion was $420, plus several smaller charges that couldn't be recovered. Total claim, $1,247. Ray came over Thursday night to double-check my math and organize the evidence packet. He printed section dividers and arranged everything chronologically with summary tabs like some kind of legal ninja. Filing fee was $78. Paid it Friday morning at the courthouse downtown, got my case number, scheduled service for the following week. The clerk explained that Fiona would have 30 days to respond once she was officially served. By Sunday, I had complete control of the situation. Vendor refunds processing according to stated timelines. Court paperwork filed with proper documentation. Fiona's belongings boxed and ready for pickup. I sent one text to her sister Janet. "Fiona's things are ready. What day works?" Kept it simple and logistical. No emotional content, no drama. Response came back 3 hours later, scheduling pickup for Tuesday at 6 p.m. No direct communication with Fiona required, which worked for everyone. I closed my organized binder and ran through the checklist one final time. Refunds totaling $4,350 pending. Small claims filed for $1,247. Personal property ready for transfer. Emergency contacts updated, locks changed, account secured. 4 weeks of methodical work to untangle 3 years of shared planning. Not bad for someone who supposedly doesn't understand what it means to actually experience life. I put my phone in the kitchen drawer and went back to the garage. The Challenger's brake system wasn't going to rebuild itself, and I had new parts to install. Plus, working with my hands beats the heck out of thinking about relationship drama. The harassment started with text messages from unknown numbers Thursday, 2 days after Fiona picked up her stuff. Same manipulative nonsense, different area codes. Pittsburgh, Philly, even some Ohio numbers. I screenshotted every message before blocking the numbers. Building a pattern, you know? Sample from Thursday night. Everyone knows you're being petty about this. My family thinks you're pathetic. Friday. Kevin treats me like a queen. You never appreciated what you had. Saturday. I told everyone at work about your little temper tantrum. They all think you're being childish. Sunday. You can ignore me all you want, but you'll never find anyone better than me. Each screenshot got saved to a folder with timestamps preserved. The pattern was obvious. Manipulation 101, straight from the textbook. Word started filtering back about what Fiona was telling people around town. According to mutual friends, I'd abandoned her at a family dinner, stolen the engagement ring, and was refusing to pay my share of wedding expenses. She was painting herself as the victim while conveniently forgetting the affair, public humiliation, and the fact that she owed me money. Very interesting. The workplace incident happened the following Wednesday. I was leaving the yard around 5:45 when our security guard approached me near the gate. Fiona had been sitting in visitor parking and tried to walk onto company property when she saw my truck. When he asked her to leave, she claimed to be my fiancé and said there was a family emergency. She told him I was refusing to return her property and she needed to collect her belongings from my work truck. Complete fabrication. She'd already gotten all her stuff, all 2 boxes of it. I added that to my log and called the non-emergency police line that evening. I explained the pattern of contact attempts, provided the workplace incident reference number, requested a case file for documentation. The officer was professional and methodical, didn't treat it like I was overreacting or being dramatic. Here's what matters from our perspective, he said. Your documentation is exactly what we want to see. Dates, times, specific descriptions. Keep doing that. He told me to keep logging every incident no matter how minor. If she showed up again at work or my house, call while it's happening so they can document it in person. Reference your case number every time. It helps us track escalation patterns. The real tea about Kevin came through a mutual friend about 2 weeks later. And holy cow, the details made Fiona's behavior even more calculated than I'd realized. Turns out Kevin wasn't some random friend who'd suddenly awakened Fiona's passion for life. They'd been messing around for at least 8 months, since before we'd signed the final wedding venue contract that I was now eating cancellation fees on. Fiona had been posting photos with him on private social media while playing devoted fiancé in public. Kevin's wife found explicit messages dating back to March, including Fiona complaining about having to pretend to be happy with someone so boring while planning a wedding she didn't even want anymore. There were screenshots of her asking Kevin to help her figure out how to get out of this trap without looking like the bad one. The affair wasn't some passionate awakening. It was a calculated exit strategy with a backup plan. Absolutely diabolical. Kevin's wife called Fiona's real estate office after finding vacation photos from a weekend when Fiona told me she was visiting her sick grandmother in Cleveland. Turns out Fiona had charged the hotel to our joint credit card and lied about visiting family when I asked about the charge. Kevin moved out temporarily after his wife confronted him, but apparently told Fiona their relationship wasn't serious enough to justify destroying his marriage. She'd lost both her side piece and her fiancé in the same week, which explained the escalating harassment. Turns out her king was more like a court jester who ran when things got real. I kept my routine anyway, boxing with Coach Kozlov twice weekly, where he continued correcting my tendency to drop my guard between combinations. The Challenger restoration moved forward. I got the brake lines run properly and started rebuilding the wiring harness with labeled circuits and proper gauge wire throughout. The motion-activated floodlight Ray installed worked perfectly. It triggered every time someone approached the driveway, which proved useful for documenting continued surveillance. 4 more drive-by incidents that month, all logged with dates, times, duration. By mid-November, the pattern was clear enough that police suggested I maintain documentation and consider filing for a protection order if behavior escalated beyond surveillance and contact attempts. I wasn't there yet, but the incident log was getting thicker. The whole situation felt like watching someone else's life implode in slow motion while mine stayed on course. Vendor refunds had processed as promised. Small claims court date was scheduled for early December. The Challenger was coming together nicely. 2 months earlier, I'd been planning a wedding. Now I was documenting harassment patterns and rebuilding a classic muscle car. I made another entry in my log that Friday after the motion light triggered 3 times between 9:30 and 10:15 p.m. Same silver Honda, same slow reconnaissance passes. I closed the notebook and put it back in the kitchen drawer. Also, maybe it was time to start saying yes when people invited me to do things outside work and boxing. Like when Laura from the parts yard mentioned needing help moving transmission components for her Camaro project this weekend. Saturday morning at the salvage yard off Route 19. Opens at 7 a.m. sharp, and Laura was already there talking to the owner about gear ratios for a 69 Camaro Z/28. She had her specs written in a small notebook and knew exactly what transmission combinations would work with her car's rear-end ratio. The T56 transmission we were picking up was heavy as heck, maybe 150 pounds with the bell housing. We loaded it properly with moving blankets and load straps, took time to secure it right in her truck bed. Professional work, no damaged threads or scratched cases. Laura noticed the organized documentation folder on my passenger seat when I grabbed my work gloves. She didn't ask nosy questions about it, which I appreciated. On the drive back, she mentioned she'd been working on the Camaro for about 14 months. Engine was professionally rebuilt, suspension sorted, but the automatic was tired and she wanted manual control. Want to see what I'm working on? I asked when we got back to my neighborhood. Her truck followed mine into the driveway and we walked back to the garage. The Challenger looked like a proper restoration in progress. Laura examined the brake line routing I'd been working on. Running them along the frame rails? Yeah, away from exhaust heat and road debris. She nodded, traced one of the lines where it curved around a suspension pickup point. Smart routing. You account for suspension travel on the front. I had. 2 inches in each direction with wheels at full lock, plus extra clearance for bump stops. We talked technical details for maybe 15 minutes. Just 2 people who understood that details matter and shortcuts cause problems later. She knew her way around tools and wasn't asking me to solve her problems. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray around noon. Group plan for next weekend. Go-kart racing facility down in the South Hills. He'd found a place with proper racing carts, not tourist trap nonsense, and wanted to organize an evening session. There's a go-kart thing next weekend with Ray, I mentioned as Laura loaded her tools back into her truck. You're welcome to join if you're interested. What kind of go-karts? Knowing Ray, probably something with too much speed and not enough safety equipment. She laughed. Sounds dangerous. What time? Saturday at 6 p.m. I added her to a group chat with Ray to coordinate details. Tuesday evening leaving work, I spotted the familiar silver Honda about 3 blocks from the yard entrance. Same deliberate pace, same obvious surveillance behavior. I got a complete look at the plate this time. Pennsylvania tags reading KDJ 4397. I added it to my log when I got home. Friday evening, Laura texted confirming she was interested in the go-kart session. Ray had apparently convinced her it was a legitimate racing experience and not recreational nonsense. Fair warning, she wrote. I'm competitive about anything with wheels and an engine. 2 weeks until the small claims hearing. Go-kart racing tomorrow night. Interior reassembly to finish this weekend on the Challenger. The harassment documentation was complete enough that I could stop actively thinking about it. Sometimes the best solution to external problems is focusing on projects that actually matter. And maybe spending time with people who appreciate good mechanical work and don't think rebuilding engines is playing with toys. The go-kart facility was tucked behind a shopping center in Mount Oliver. Professional setup with about 20 racing carts and a quarter-mile track with proper safety barriers. We signed waivers and got fitted with helmets and racing harnesses. The carts were legit racing equipment, Rotax engines, adjustable seats, responsive steering. None of us had raced before, but Laura picked up the racing line quickly, while Ray provided running commentary about every other driver on track. We were maybe 15 minutes into our 20-minute session when I heard raised voices from the pit area. Fiona's voice carried over the engine noise and tire squeal. I pulled into the pit lane and shut off my cart. Ray and Laura followed me in, pulling off their helmets. Fiona was arguing with track staff about accessing the pit area, pointing toward our group. She'd followed us there. We're leaving, I said, standing up from the cart and walking toward equipment return. Fiona pushed past the track employee and walked directly toward me. Her face was flushed and she was talking rapidly about needing to resolve this situation and how I was embarrassing her by parading around with other people. I kept walking toward the exit. Sir, please don't engage with the disruption, the track manager called out. We're handling this situation. Fiona grabbed for my helmet, which I was carrying by the chin strap. I moved away, but she lunged for it again and caught the face shield with her fingernails. The helmet twisted out of my grip and hit concrete hard enough to crack the outer shell. A supervisor appeared immediately, examined the damaged helmet, asked Fiona for ID and contact information. She refused the ID but gave a phone number. He wrote everything on an incident form and referenced the signed waiver about equipment damage responsibility. Ma'am, you're being billed for helmet replacement. You also need to leave the premises immediately. Ray was standing near the cart return with his arms crossed. Congratulations, he said to Fiona. You just earned a lifetime ban from go-kart racing. He paused. That's got to be a first, even for you. Security showed up and handed Fiona a formal trespass notice for the facility. The manager gave me a copy of the incident report and confirmed their security cameras had recorded the entire thing. He explained that if the replacement invoice went unpaid, they'd pursue collection through standard business channels. Let me be crystal clear, I said to Fiona as she walked past with security. We are completely finished. Show up around me again and you will see what will happen. 20 minutes later, we were back on track, finishing our session in different carts. Laura won the final race while Ray continued his commentary about racing strategy and optimal braking points. I filed the incident report in my log when I got home. Small claims hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. My documentation now covered 4 months of escalating behavior patterns. A damaged racing helmet fit perfectly into the established timeline of property destruction and public confrontations. Time to let the legal system handle what common sense and basic human decency couldn't. Small claims hearing, Tuesday morning, 9:30 a.m. I arrived 20 minutes early with my complete documentation packet. Fiona showed up at 9:25 with no lawyer, carrying a folder that looked like it was put together the night before. The magistrate called our case at 9:35, asked me to present my claim first. I walked through the wedding expenses chronologically, referenced the written agreement, and explained which costs were non-refundable after cancellation. $1,247 plus the $78 filing fee. Fiona argued that I canceled the wedding unilaterally, so she shouldn't be responsible for costs I chose to incur. The magistrate asked if she had documentation showing she hadn't agreed to split expenses equally. She didn't. Asked if she disputed the expense amounts or cancellation timing. She didn't. Judgment for the plaintiff. $1,325 total. The judge stamped the order and handed me the official judgment. 15 minutes of testimony. 5 minutes of deliberation. 3 years of relationship reduced to contract law and supporting documentation. Fiona paid the judgment within the court-mandated 15 days. The go-kart facility invoice got paid too. The surveillance stopped completely after court. Problem solved through proper documentation and legal channels. The rebuilt 340 from Butler County got installed the week before court. The Challenger had its first successful startup on a Saturday morning in mid-December. Then, just when I thought I was done with this entire shit show, the grand finale came. And let me tell you, it was delicious. 3 weeks after the court hearing, I was in the garage around 9 p.m. working on the Challenger's interior when the motion light triggered. Laura was there helping me install the new seat covers, and we both looked up when we heard a car door slam in the driveway. Fiona stumbled around the corner into the garage light, clearly impaired out of her mind. She was wearing what looked like pajama pants and a hoodie, hair looking like she'd been sleeping in her car. The smell of something substance-related hit us from 10 feet away. "There you are," she slurred, pointing at me with what looked like a half-empty drink. "Living your sad little life in this pathetic garage?" Laura looked at me with raised eyebrows. "Oh, please, is this—" "Yup, unfortunately." Fiona's eyes locked onto Laura, and her face twisted into pure rage. "Oh, what the heck is this? Already moved on to some random witch?" Laura laughed, actually laughed, and kept working on the seat installation. "Lady, I've rebuilt more engines than you've had hot dinners. But sure, I'm the problem here. You think you're so smart with your little court games and your stupid car?" Fiona took a swig from the can and nearly lost her balance. "I came here to tell you what a pathetic loser you are." "Mission accomplished," I said, pulling out my phone to call 911. "You're drunk on my property and violating the trespass warning from last month. You can't call the cops on me. We were together for 3 years. Of course. The 911 dispatcher answered on the second ring. I gave my address, explained we had an impaired trespasser who'd been harassing me for months, referenced my existing case number. Fiona heard case number and completely lost her mind. "Case number? You actually have a case number for me? What kind of psycho are you?" Laura looked up from the seat she was bolting down. "The kind who documents everything properly. You should try it sometime." "Nobody asked you." Laura stood up slowly, wrench still in her hand. "I'm sorry. What did you just say?" Something in Laura's tone made Fiona take a step back, which was hilarious because Laura's maybe 5 feet 4 inches, and Fiona had 3 inches on her. I was just... No, please, finish your thought. I want to hear what someone who cheats on their fiancé and then stalks him thinks about my character." The cop car pulled into the driveway with perfect timing, lights flashing but no siren. 2 officers got out and approached the garage. "Evening, folks. We got a call about a trespassing situation." I handed him my incident log and explained the history briefly. The officer flipped through a few pages and nodded. "Ma'am, have you been drinking tonight?" Fiona tried to hide the can behind her back. "I just came here to get closure," the second officer repeated, looking around the garage. "By showing up uninvited at 9 p.m. with a beverage and calling people names? He ruined my life. My whole life is messed up because of him." Laura couldn't help herself. "Your life is messed up because you cheated on someone who was paying for your wedding. That's not his fault, that's just consequences. You don't know anything about me. I know you're standing impaired in someone else's garage at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, yelling at people who are trying to ignore you." The first officer was trying not to laugh. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to take a field sobriety test." Fiona failed. Couldn't walk a straight line, couldn't touch her nose, couldn't recite the alphabet past M. The breathalyzer read numbers that were well over the legal limit. "You're under arrest for trespassing and public intoxication." As they put her in handcuffs, Fiona started crying and screaming about how unfair everything was. "This is all his fault. He's the one who abandoned me. He never appreciated me." The officer looked at me while his partner loaded Fiona into the cruiser. Domestic situations are never fun, but your documentation made this pretty straightforward. She'll spend the night in county lockup, probably get released tomorrow with a court date. After they left, Laura and I stood in the garage for a minute listening to the Challenger's idle. She picked up her wrench and went back to work on the seat. Well, she said without looking up. That was entertaining. Yup, it was. I grinned. Crazy girl. Laura torqued down the last bolt and patted the seat. There, want to take her for a test drive? We drove around the neighborhood for 20 minutes, windows down, 340 rumbling through the exhaust. The car ran perfectly. Turns out the best revenge is living well and having someone who appreciates good craftsmanship. Fiona said she'd forget me in a week, but she's the one who can't seem to move on.